We talked Detroit Tigers. Let's talk Detroit Lions. Here we go. 32 teams, 32 shows.
Oh, yeah! Friday! We head north to the state of Michigan, where we're biting kneecaps all day long with the Detroit Lions.
I'm surprised.
That was a 9 out of 10 there for Kelley Bydlon.
I'm surprised.
Very nice.
Some sort of local Ford dealership has not, in the Detroit
We're
region,
slashing prices all month long.
has not reached out to one Kelley Bydlon. I think that would behoove one of those dealerships to do so. All right, the Detroit Lions, a team that, under Dan Campbell as a first-year head coach last year, 3-13-1, your last place finishers in the NFC North. It was, for a time, we thought maybe a team that could not even win a game. 0-10-1. Finally got the job done against Minnesota, a game that killed a number of people in Survivor. But at the end of the day, it was an offense that was bottom 10 in the league, led by Jared Goff at quarterback, who was benched a couple of different times throughout the season, 25th overall in points scored, right at the start of the bottom 10 in total yards, and then a defense that was just nuked by injury all year, finished second from the bottom in points allowed. They were bottom 10 in basically every other defensive category, Jeff. But look, there's a reason why people are bullish on Detroit this year. We've heard a lot of steam, a lot of love for Detroit in the offseason, and with some of the moves they've made, at least on paper, there are reasons to get excited. First off, they had Anthony Lynn depart. He was the offensive coordinator. It is now Ben Johnson, the new OC, former tight ends coach there. He's promoted within the organization. The big move was the draft, where Aiden Hutchinson, they get him to fall to the number 2 pick, the local product out of Michigan. Take him, followed by Jamison Williams, the standout wide receiver from Alabama, with the 12th pick. Added another wide receiver in free agency with DJ Chark, 1-year deal. And then trying to bolster up that secondary that was brutal all last year. Mike Hughes in on a 1-year. Tracy Walker at safety does get gets a 3-year, I should say, not small, the biggest deal of anybody in the offseason, 3-year, $25 million. So those are the moves made. We talked ad nauseum last year about some of the in-game coaching from Dan Campbell, left a lot to be desired. Personnel wasn't there. Injuries piled up. With the moves that were made, Jeff, do you expect things to be significantly better, as the odds makers would suggest, 6.5 the win total this year?
So the one thing I am high on with Detroit this year is that they are not the worst team in the division. Other than that, there's only so much you can really push a team like this forward in, man. You still have Jared Goff as your quarterback. I mean, that's problem number one. If Sean McVay's not coaching Jared Goff, he's a below-average starter. He can do some things that are better than a below-average starter, and he is a better quarterback than most horrible teams have had in the past.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the biggest thing,
Jeff. I think the problem with that actually is he's good enough,
you could
to not put yourself in a good draft position. Right?
So I have going through this. I had Detroit landing in one version of my first look predictions at 6. In another version, I had them at 7. So 6.5 is exactly perfect. So that doesn't trigger a bet. But look, in the end here, Ben, the most intriguing thing with this team is going to actually be, when do we see Jamison Williams? When do we see him? Because I think that offense is going to look very different without him there. And then when he is added into the fold post-injury, then you could start seeing Detroit in the second half of the season maybe lose a bunch of shootouts that all right, you know what? With the right quarterback in place, we have enough talent that we actually can compete next year with a different quarterback other than Goff as a rookie, whoever they may draft or whoever they may acquire. The only thing is, those first 4 games, Kelley, they're pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on the Jameson Williams thing, Jeff, because we know how dynamic of a player he is. And look, with him being a rookie, there's no reason to rush him along, right, as far as his injury goes. So as soon as he actually does come back for them, we know he's going to come back basically at 100%, and it could instantly change how the offense looks. So I'm with you on that part.
For those wondering, it is still in the quarterback room behind Jared Goff. David Blau.
Yeah, not good.
Tim Boyle.
Oh, yeah.
Those are still your 2 options.
Your job's safe.
Did we ever figure out why
safe.
Boyle started those games over Blau last year? Did we ever figure that out?
It remains
I think you're the only person still wondering about that.
Yeah, we've collectively just moved on, Jeff. We'll discuss the schedule for the Lions, their positional rankings entering 2022 on the other side as we continue. 32 teams and 32 shows here on Primetime Action. But looking at the Detroit Lions, so if we look at the overall positional rankings, we have the overall ESPN PFF roster grades, Jeff, and Detroit 25th out of the 32 teams entering this year. Strength projects to be the O-line, and I'm sure that's why you see a lot of very smart NFL minds over the offseason when we value offensive line play specifically very, very highly. And they have the third projected starting lineup here for the O-line this year with the Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Holly Vaitai, and Penei Sewell with 3 first-rounders, a third-rounder, and then a highly paid free agent coming in. So that is really the strong point of a team who, again, 25th in the overall rankings, but third on the offensive line, these from Pro Football Focus, 21st in the wide receiver room, and then, Jeff, 20th in the running back room. The issue, as you alluded to before, will be defensively, where they're 26th on the defensive line, 28th at the linebacker room, and then 25th in the secondary this year.
I want to go to the offensive line real quick because you use a high pick on Sewell, who's obviously playing right tackle still. But you're in a scenario here where that offensive line, and those rankings kind of bring it up there, Ben, this offensive line is sneaky good. So you have a scenario here where if your quarterback underperforms this year, you actually, like I said, you have some pieces here that could really turn things around quickly. The defense is a whole bunch of, I don't know what they're going to really be. They could be improved from what they were last year, or they could be one of the worst units in the whole league yet again. Nothing would shock me defensively for Detroit.
The one thing, though, and this is another, what you're looking at first 4 games, we flashed the schedule up a moment ago, Jeff, something that you certainly feel bullish on with this Detroit team is the general strength of schedule. From Warren Sharp, they have the 5th easiest strength of schedule. In fact, this entire NFC North is all in the top half. It's Chicago 4th easiest, Detroit 5th easiest, and then Green Bay and Minnesota 15th, 16th, respectively. So that's part of this. And the question you have, though, is if Detroit stumbles at all out of the blocks, that's where, as you said, you think the win total anywhere from 6 to 7. That first month is going to be so imperative. And plus, you have an early bye, one of the earlier byes we get in week 6. Makes it pretty tough in a 17-game regular season up from 16. If things don't go well early, this could be a big struggle. That's why I don't know that I'm in a position where I'd want to get crazy on any of these 9, 10-1 long shots to win the division or even a 4-1 to make the playoffs. The finishing position in the division is the one that interests me the most because the way, at least at DraftKings, they have this lined, they're still favored to finish last at -110. We did our full breakdown, myself and Wes Reynolds, last night, Jeff, on the Chicago Bears. Third at +190. Again, there's a lot of things that have to sort of sort into place here, and you're handicapping essentially all 4 teams in the division when you make one of these bets, so it's not the first thing I would look to bet. But in the case of Detroit, +190 has to be intriguing, no?
Yeah, I think that's actually something that's pretty bettable, all things considered, Ben, because the Bears, that roster's so terrible. You and I did actually talked about it at length. I bet on Chicago last week, but it's just one of those rosters is just like, what are you doing? And the Lions, at least, again, I don't know how it will pan out as a whole, Kelley, for this Detroit team, but they're at least attempting. They're attempting, and they're really setting themselves up for, okay, we don't expect Jared Goff to be the quarterback long term. We're probably going to end up with drafting someone sooner rather than later. But for this season, +190, third place, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that too.
That's as close to a bet as you can get in that sort of market. I'm
with you. Of anything else I would bet in the NFC North, this would be the only thing. I mean, I'm pretty loaded up on Vikings bets already. I even like the O'Connell one that Eric Eager threw out earlier. That might be adding to my portfolio on Vikings bets as well. But yeah, to me, we always got to say this with the NFL. Assuming health prevails, right? The Packers and Vikings, it's a two-team race for this division. So then you're talking about it being a 2-team race for fourth place, for last place, right? And I don't +190 to avoid that for the Lions. Right. I'm with you guys. I think there's solid value there.
What's funny is most of those when we've talked about them, we flash them up and I look at them, for 2 seconds. I'm like, why would anybody?
They're not really bettable, yeah.
But this is the one where I'm okay. That's actually an extremely fair price, if not a little bit of value on that third place finish. And B, that is by far to me, Jeff, the most likely outcome for Detroit in this division. The question we have to ask ourselves, though, and amidst a division where you have 2 first-year head coaches coming in, and Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, we talked yesterday, Matt Eberflus coming into Chicago there as head coach. When you've got a situation where Dan Campbell is, should we say, not the most analytically optimal decision maker as a head coach. Jeff, how much do we expect him to grow from year 1 to 2 as head coach? What do we expect out of some of the puzzling late game decisions that we saw last year, which, to be clear, weren't all bad? It was just, the variance kind of went all over the place.
He was better than I thought he would be. To be completely,
me too.
He was significantly better than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be all-time bad and possibly done in 1 year. And he's there in year 2. And you know what? I thought he was reasonable. I didn't think he was good, but I thought he was reasonable.
I don't think there's
year.
anybody out there that can't be impressed with his season last year. After we were watching on Hard Knocks and stuff of the Big Lebowski references and biting kneecaps and stuff.
I mean, the opening press conference. The opening press conference was the biting kneecaps thing. It's like, all right, this guy's going to last. This guy might not last the season. Of course, then you ended up with the worst, quite possibly the worst coach in the history of the NFL in Jacksonville last year with Urban's tenure. But look, Campbell, at some point, there will be a point of growth for this team where they outgrow Dan Campbell as their head coach. It won't happen this year. It probably won't happen next year. But for a team that is developing and trying to be better, Campbell's actually not a bad guy to have. If you just can't expect to win anything of significance with a guy like that as your head coach.
One of the best teams against the spread last year when all was said and done. And we've talked about this time and again where the teams that finish years strong with literally nothing to play for, and even though it might upset fans in the moment because they cost themselves a chance at what on the surface appeared to be a surefire number 1 pick. Of course, Jeff, they get their guy anyway with Hutchinson ending up falling to number 2. But it's like a team that finishes the year, they win 3 of their last 6 games. Like how much of credit do you? I mean, we certainly give credit to Dan Campbell for keeping the team motivated and still playing hard. How much of a carryover do you realistically expect with something like that, though? Given that, I mean, again, the quarterback is what you keep going back to. It's a bottom 5 situation in the NFL, but that has to mean something, right?
I don't know about bottom 5, but it's clearly bottom 10 with Goff. But again, you're going to learn very quickly with this team. Their first 4 games are, you know what? I'll throw New England in there too. Their first 5 games, there are paths to victory in those 5 games. Even though at New England and at Minnesota's asking a lot of them, but they're going to probably be a 4.5-point dog when it's all said and done against Philadelphia because the Sirianni syndicate will come flying in like they did all last year. But the Commanders and the Seahawks, they should be favored in those games at home. So you're going to learn pretty quickly if this is a team that's going to be serious about being a competitive 6 or 7 win team, or if this is going to be a drag of the league yet again.
Just going back to that division finishing position market too, I think I would probably just bet that Lions one if we had access to it. I would bet.
No question.
It's a good bet.
That's one of the ones I love.
If you are like me, where you think there's just a massive divide between the top 2 in that division and the bottom 2, you could also just bet the 3rd place finishing position on both the Bears and Lions. The Bears is plus 180. The Lions is plus 190. You could bet both of those and call it a day. I think that cash.
Nothing wrong with that, Kelley.
32 teams, 32 shows. The Parles trifecta. Jaguars, Jets, now Lions here on Primetime Action. But reasons to be bullish on Detroit coming into 2022.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.